Coming up on Tech News today, gamify your activity tracker, the strange case of the missing Kickstarted drone, and what are the 100 best iPhone apps of all time.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Tech News Today is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Tech News Today for Friday, December 11th, 2015. This episode is brought to you by Braintree. Looking to set up payments for your business? Braintree gives your app or website a payment solution that accepts just about every payment method with one simple integration. Plus, Braintree will give you the first $50,000 in transactions fee-free. To learn more, visit braintreepayments.com/TNT. And by the Ring Video Doorbell. With Ring, you can see and talk to anyone at your door from anywhere in the world using your smartphone. It's like caller ID for your home. Right now, get free expedited FedEx shipping in time for the holidays when you go to ring.com/TNT. Tech News Today is the show where we talk about the tech news with the journalists who report it. I am Megan Maroney. Mike Elgin is resuming his life as a digital nomad, but you will be able to see him in our holiday specials and on This Week in Google when we can pin him down. Our co-anchor today is Mashable senior tech correspondent Christina Warren. Welcome, Christina.
Hi, glad to be here.
So did you get, I know you reviewed your Apple battery case. You have it right there.
I do. Here it is. Even with the badunkadunk on the back. Yes, there's the case.
I am getting, mine is supposed to come today. I'm very excited. I have a 6 Plus, so it's not going to fit it. But I did get it for my daughter, who constantly her 6 always runs out of battery. So what do you think about it so far?
Yeah, okay, so there are a couple things. I like it and I don't like it. I think that it does a good job. It's actually a fairly good case. A lot of people do make fun of the bump on the back, and I'm not going to lie and say that it's the most attractive thing, because it's not. But one of the reasons it exists, the bump exists, is because it's super easy to get on and off. So the Mophie, and I have a number of Mophies and the other cases like that, they tend to have multiple pieces where you kind of have to slide them off, and it can be kind of annoying and be one of those things that's not a great experience, especially if you're like me. And even when I have a battery case, I don't always want to have it on. So it's easy to get it on and off. I like that. It also feels really good in the hand. The fluoroelastomer, silicone, whatever, feels good. It feels good in the hand. The thing I don't like about it is, I'm going to show you, these are my Apple Beats Rose Gold headphones. Got them about a month ago. They do not fit the headphone jack.
Oh,
does not work. You need an extender. You need an extender. Now, that's also the case with most battery cases. Most battery cases will need an extender. If you use earpods, like Apple's earpods, that works just fine with the case. But you need to get an extender for something else. And that's sort of annoying if, you've just dropped $300 on some headphones. These are wireless, so I can use them, with Bluetooth, but Bluetooth doesn't, my Bluetooth might be dead or something. So that's a little bit frustrating. But all in all, I think it's a good case. And I think that it's, like, your daughter, if she's always running out of battery, this is definitely going to, it basically doubles your battery life. So it's easy to get on and off. It feels good in the hand. It does have a little, junk in the trunk, but other than that, it's good. It is interesting that they came out with the case, though, because that's kind of their way of admitting what we've all known. If you don't have the iPhone 6S Plus or 6 Plus, the battery life is like the worst part of the phone. So it's interesting that they're sort of acknowledging that by being like, hey, here's a case.
Right. Well, they sort of acknowledged it, and then Tim Cook came out and said, well, it's really if you're going to go camping or you're going to spend, the weekend away from,
Okay, that's fine. Maybe other people use their phones differently, but I have to plug in at least once a day. So it's one of those things where I don't know if I would put this in this way. For camping, certainly this is going to be good, but I would even go as far as saying, like, you're going to have a long night out, and you're not going to have access to plug anything in. So this is the time when, like, you're like, what, I'm actually going to take this case because it's going to be a while before I can plug into something. So
yeah, and whenever I go to San Francisco, that's the worst. I think it's pinging all the time, and my battery runs out, or it used to with the 6. We should say it's $99, which is a little more expensive. You have a good review of a comparison with the Mophie case, and the goods and bads of both. And so, have you been experiencing any problems with like cell reception? That was it.
No. I mean, they actually put a passive coupled antenna on the back of it. So I've never really had that issue with the other cases, although I know that in certain cases they can definitely do. They can impede cellular activity, but they actually put an antenna on the back of it to make sure that you're not going to have any problems with cell reception. And I have two phones. I've got both the 6 and the 6S, and they're both on Verizon. And I've noticed, I mean, I get the exact same number of bars, whether it's in the case or not. In fact, actually right now, the one that's in the case has 3 bars, and the one that's not on the case has 2. So take that for what it's worth.
Excellent. So today, Microsoft updated its fitness wearable, the Microsoft Band 2. They have improved exercise tracking, music controls, and activity reminders. I have the device. It is a great activity tracker, but it has not become wildly popular yet, and I doubt I would have it if it wasn't something that I was going to review. And a lot of these fitness wearables, even though we hear about them in the news, they're still a hard sell for a lot of people. Joining us today to talk about why this might be is Omar Gallaga, reporter for the Austin American-Statesman. Welcome, Omar.
Hi, Megan. How are you?
I'm good. So you compare fitness gadgets to gym memberships. Like, we're willing to pay for them, but then chances are that we are going to get bored pretty quickly and then stop using them.
Yeah, right around the 4 to 6 month mark is when it tends to happen, when it kind of goes in the drawer. I mean, that happens with Fitbits. That I've heard people even doing that with an Apple Watch, where after 2-3 months, they just found they just weren't using it very much. I went through the same thing with a Fitbit, where I had one of the ones that was recalled for the nickel rash thing. I never got the rash, but I did send it back because I'm like, hey, $140, and I just never bought one to replace it. So yeah, that was the end of my Fitbit experience.
So tell us about Goji Play.
Yeah, they're an Austin company, really interesting. They've been around for about 2 years, and I hadn't really heard about them until a few months ago. And they developed in 2013 a thing that goes on your exercise machinery that that's kind of like adds gamifying elements to your ellipticals, to your stationary bike. And they just recently came out with the version 2.0 of that hardware, which I've got here with me, and is basically adding buttons to these machines so that you can play games on your phone or your tablet. And this is what they look like. These are the buttons.
That's cool.
Very PlayStation-like buttons that you can press on here as you're on your machine. These come off, so you can put them on whatever. These somewhat come off. So that's what they look like. They're like they have little AAA batteries in there, and they connect with your device via Bluetooth. And they have an ecosystem of games that they've developed, kind of like mini games. There's boxing. There's one where you're kind of navigating the streets as a delivery driver on a bike. So you're playing games as you're exercising, as you're on a stationary bike, as you're on the elliptical. In my experience playing with it, the games needed a little bit of work, and I found it required a little bit of coordination to kind of get your buttons going on your fingers as you're exercising. But they're trying to create a larger ecosystem, not just with this device, but also with other apps. They want to do a meditation app that they're working on. They want to kind of create this, almost like what Nike tried to do with the fuel points. They want to do Goji points that you would kind of earn you rewards, and you could share with your friends, and you could do competitions and tournaments. They really are thinking big with this. And this device costs $119. The apps are generally either free or about $1 for the games that you would download. So
a couple months ago, Atari came out with something like a little bit similar, trying to gamify exercise. It was Atari Fit, and the more you exercise, the more you got to unlock these old Atari games. I tried it. It was again something I didn't stick with, even though I love Atari. But so do you think? I mean, I know Wii Fit exists, but do you think that gaming and exercise is going to be the future?
I feel like we had a moment where when the Wii first came out and people were kind of off of their couches and playing those games. I feel like when the Fitbit stuff started coming out, that we had a moment where gaming and exercise was a thing. The Kinect, the PlayStation Move, all that was starting to happen, and then it just kind of went away. Like the Kinect on the Xbox One has been a huge failure. They've kind of detached that from the Xbox One, and there's really no games being developed for that anymore. The Wii U is no longer as focused on the motion stuff as the Wii was. It feels like we've kind of crested past that, and there's not really a movement to combine gaming with exercise anymore. Like that kind of went away. You're seeing apps and stuff that's more on the fitness side, but very little on the gaming side. So I feel like this is sort of an attempt to kind of kind of recapture that magic. But I don't know. I mean, like, I don't know how well this is selling yet. And depth has fallen away. So I'm not sure. I'm not sure really if there's a successful marriage of that happening right now anywhere.
No, I think you're right. And it's funny because, Megan, you mentioned the Atari Fit. I remember, I never used one of these, but I remember the infomercials back in the day. There was a Life Cycle had a Super Nintendo attachment. So you could play Super Nintendo on your expensive Life Cycle stationary bike. So this trend kind of goes back a long ways. And I think you're right, Omar. There was kind of a moment where it could have happened and we sort of crested past it. Now, what do you think is more important when it comes to fitness wearables? The form, how it looks, how it feels on your wrist, or the function, how it works?
Well, as someone who tried the Microsoft Band, the first generation, when that came out, and experienced the feeling of being shackled and feeling like I had a handcuff on me all the day, it was so uncomfortable to wear. It's like, I could not, with the Microsoft Band, I could not get past that. And it's kind of kept me from being curious about the second generation because it felt so uncomfortable. And I'm
better.
I think it's more
really
comfortable. I think it's more
comfortable. You had one job.
Okay, it's more comfortable. It's still not comfortable.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And with the Apple Watch, I've kind of kept away from that too because I've been having a hard time justifying not waiting till the second generation and seeing what improvements happen there. But yeah, it has to be comfortable. It has to be wearable. It has to be something that you want to wear every day, or you're going to hit that 6-week period where you just stick it in a drawer because it doesn't feel good to wear. It's not, the ideal thing is something that's invisible, something that, just blends in with what you're wearing and just is functional, and that you don't have to think about it. It's just always there, and it's always tracking you if you want it to be tracking you, and or something that's jewelry that looks good to wear, like the Apple Watch.
Well, I think that a lot of complaints about the Apple Watch is it just does too much. There's too much. It just, I think that's what Microsoft was trying to do. Like, we're really focusing on activity. But I think what you're saying is what Apple knows, that, it has to be something that you're going to wear all the time, that you're comfortable, that does do other things besides just activity. Otherwise, like my Microsoft Band 2, which I found comfortable, I'm not wearing it. And,
you're not wearing it.
Yeah. And it's, you don't have to regularly charge it. So that's something that makes you free. Unless I have to charge something every night, I'm going to probably forget to use it the next day. So yeah, I think, I think, and what I also like about the Apple Watch, which is also kind of the gamifying aspect that I like, is the awards that I get. And I will freely admit that, just the flashing, once you've hit your calorie goal or doubled it or whatever it is, and you get a little award. And I'm still a sucker for those.
That's one thing the Nike one did really well, was when you would hit your goal, it would like little fireworks and all over your wrist, and that always was really cool to see. But that was another one, the Nike Fuel Band. I just could not stick with it. It just didn't do enough. It didn't have enough functionality for me.
Well, Omar, what are you working on now? Anything you can talk about?
I just did a whole piece today about why photo frames died. Like, you remember they were a really hot item, like around 2009. That was the holiday gift, like digital photo frames. And so I did a post kind of going back and like, why did they kind of just go away? And what prompted it was I saw Amazon's, their 12 days of Christmas deals. They had a photo frame on there. I'm like, really? What? Is that a thing? Those still exist? And I kind of did a little bit of digging, and it's like, yeah, right around 2009, 2010, they just sort of, that market crashed. And, not coincidentally, that's the year the iPad came out. So there you go. That's part of why they, fell out of favor.
Right. Another example of a device doing more than one thing, I guess, too.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
And you're gearing up for South by Southwest 3 months from now?
Oh, boy. I'm stressed out already. Yeah, I mean, we had this huge thing happen in October that we talked about on the evening show, with Gamergate. And so I think they're still reeling from that a bit. But yeah, they're making announcements. Baratunde Thurston, who I think we all love, is going to be inducted into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations, Baratunde. Well-deserved. They've announced some of their community grants that they do every year, the $10,000 grants. So yeah, they're still making announcements. There's still keynote announcements being made and programming that's being added. So yeah, March, it is extending in both directions. There's now EDU, South by Southwest Interactive, and the gaming has been detached from the main interactive to be its own thing after interactive. So you're talking about 10, 11 days from 5 days. So yeah, I will be very busy in mid-March.
Well, hopefully we'll talk to you all about it then. Omar Gallaga is the technology and culture reporter at the Austin American-Statesman on Twitter. He is at Omarg. Thanks for joining us, Omar.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
This episode is brought to you by Braintree. Maybe you're working on the next Uber, Airbnb, or GitHub, then why not use the same simple payment solution that helped them become what they are today? Braintree makes payments so fast and easy and seamless. Add it to your app or website with just a few lines of code, and you are instantly ready to accept Apple Pay, Android Pay, PayPal, Venmo, credit cards, even Bitcoin. We spoke with Ankur Arya, the general manager for Braintree Mobile, about how they started in desktop and built Braintree from the ground up for mobile.
We looked at mobile as where the majority of the e-commerce market was going very early on, and we built the platform to be optimized for mobile. But we actually started powering desktop sites. There are a whole host of merchants, thousands of web merchants and also cross-platform merchants that do use Braintree. So some of the more popular names like Airbnb and some of these other folks that you see on our marquee also have desktop websites that we power. So it's for native mobile experiences as well as the web, mobile web and desktop web. So we're pretty much everywhere.
Braintree's fast payouts and continuous support mean you will always be ready whether you are earning your first dollar or your billionth. See fewer abandoned carts and more sales with Braintree's best-in-class mobile checkout experience. Braintree gives you a full-stack payment solution, support for all payment types your customers might want, single integration, access across all platforms with superior fraud protection, customer service, and fast payouts. To check it out for yourself, visit braintreepayments.com/TNT. John Markoff has been covering the field of artificial intelligence for several decades now. Writing in the New York Times today, he says a computer vision program has outperformed a group of humans in identifying handwritten characters based on a single example. It's really interesting to read this. Basically, it can look at these and tell the difference much faster than a human. What do you think about this, Christina?
I think it's fantastic. And I think it just kind of shows the power that of artificial intelligence and machine learning and where that's gotten. So, I mean, this is huge. I mean, we already see a lot of OCR technology, but if you think just about this sort of level of recognition, I know this is just one study. This has a lot of potential for kind of digitizing things going forward and also helping kind of understand what's being signs and notes and other things. I mean, you could see how this could be implemented in technology we use every day in the future.
Yeah, I mean, yesterday Facebook made their big announcement. They said they'd be outsourcing the design for their artificially intelligent machine learning server that's codenamed Big Sur, which is sort of a combination of something ominous and wonderful. But I read a lot about this story, and Google, of course, outsourced their deep learning technology. And as far as I can tell, I mean, it's not the same. I said outsource, but I meant open source. It's for anyone who has the computing power or the knowledge to use it. But I'm not even sure who those people are that would be able to use it.
I mean, I would assume it would have to be organizations, again, kind of like Facebook and Google, who obviously already have the compute power and the server farms to do that. And then maybe, university mainframes, maybe, some big projects. I mean, obviously, MIT is where the study that John Marco fraud about was done. But I mean, you could think maybe Carnegie Mellon, maybe, CERN in France, maybe places like that could do that sort of thing. But I think that the hope is, of course, that eventually the technology and this kind of, neural learning stuff will be possible on less powerful servers and devices, so it can be eventually implemented into other systems too.
Well, the finding today that Markov was writing about, the findings in Science, in the journal Science, it was about Bayesian program learning, BPL. I'd never heard of this, but that's different from deep neural networks. So neural networks use the large sets of data, and BPL, I guess they learn more quickly, more like humans would. As opposed to, just using so much data and eventually getting it. It's like just, a little bit of data will help them learn, help these machines learn. But they were careful to say that even though the machines were surpassing the people in tests, they didn't want to make direct comparisons between human intelligence and computer intelligence. So I guess what they're saying is there's nothing to be afraid of here.
We promise they're getting smart. They're not getting that smart, right?
Right. So Google Wallet is getting an update. Soon you'll be able to use the app on your Android phone to send money to anyone in your contact list with a phone number. It's U.S. only for now. It's interesting that Facebook did this earlier. You can, send money through Facebook. Not only do I not know anyone who does it, I tried to suggest it for someone and they were so confused. They just were frightened and, it wasn't something that they felt safe doing at all. So I wonder if this is going to take off.
I don't know. I mean, I think Venmo, I mean, at least with me and my group of friends, I mean, I literally Venmo everyone. I don't carry cash. And it's one of those things like I don't know. I don't remember how I lived before Venmo. And so that's why the Facebook thing was funny, because Venmo was so integrated into Facebook's API that it's almost like, why would I send money using Facebook itself? Everybody's already on Venmo. And I kind of wonder if the same thing is true for Google Wallet. But I do think that it's smart. And I think that it's smart that Google's getting into this space. Apple is rumored to be getting into the space too, because it does make a lot of sense to send payment to payment stuff just if you have somebody's phone number or email or whatever the case may be. It's certainly super fast, and when you can access that stuff, I think on Google Wallet it actually has a lot of real potential, because then you could potentially, it's already in your wallet, you could then go immediately and pay for something. You don't have to worry about that next step like cashing out. Venmo, that's the kind of the one thing with it. You've got to cash out to your account, and so if you're like me, what you wind up doing is kind of carrying a balance with Venmo for a while, which I'm sure they love. I'm sure PayPal is a big fan of that. I don't necessarily like having a balance in kind of a third-party system, but if it was integrated into the wallet on my phone, okay, cool. Well, then that means when I take a cab or buy a coffee or do something else, that money can just come right out of it. So I think it's smart for them to do this. But I do think you're right. I think there's a certain segment of the population that's always going to have a hard time with these kind of payment-to-payment transfers on mobile. But I do feel like increasingly, and I'm certainly at the older end of the spectrum of my group of friends, but for younger users especially, I mean, I think this is how we transfer money. It seems silly to do it any other way, when you can just text somebody cash.
Definitely. So this next story is so fascinating. And as I was looking through it, I was thinking this should be the next topic for the podcast Serial next year. And I'm definitely...
You're so right.
I'm going to send an email to Sarah Koenig and let her know I've got her in season 3 for Serial. Kickstarter has hired freelance journalist Mark Harris to investigate the Kickstarter-funded campaign for a drone that has not been made yet. So there were 12,075 backers. They pledged over £2 million to help bring the Xano project to life. It was supposed to be an autonomous mini drone, and it never got made.
No, so fascinating.
Yeah, it was the most funded project to date. It's fascinating, but it also happens all the time, right? But
it does happen all the time. I think what's great about this is that this was obviously, because it was one of their most funded projects, it was the most funded, European project to date. The fact that it didn't work, that they had to kind of explain this is never going to happen. That's happened to other projects, even high-profile projects before, projects that have raised a lot of money. But when you're talking about something that's raised more than £2 million, so that's what, about $3.5 million? If I'm doing my conversion correctly, I'm probably not. Someone correct me in the comments. That's a significant amount of money, and it's probably an embarrassment to Kickstarter. And what I think is interesting about this is that usually in the past, Kickstarter has kind of remained a little bit holds barred with this stuff, right? They're a little bit hands off. They want to say, oh, well, we're not saying you're buying a product. We're saying you're investing in someone's vision. Let's not talk about the fact that tons and tons of Kickstarter projects fail. But I guess because this one was so high profile, the fact that they are actually hiring someone to do an investigative piece into why it failed and what happened, I think is instructive, not just for the people who backed it, but for Kickstarter users in general, and probably just for the entire crowdfunding kind of platform. I feel like there have been a lot of kind of stories, and I've even written a few, kind of looking into why certain projects failed and what happened, and kind of the challenges of running a Kickstarter. And the more successful you get, actually, the more challenging it can actually get to try to, make good on your promise. I think especially with something like this, £2.5 million is a lot of money, but it's really not a lot of money if you're thinking about trying to build a, autonomous mini drone. If you think about it, that's actually a very small amount of money of R&D to capitalize something like that. So I'm really looking forward to reading this piece, and I think it's great that Kickstarter is doing this.
So PS Chops in the chat room says 2 million euros is $2.2 million.
$2.3 million. It's a lot of money, but yeah, I mean, I think that it's great that they're investing into having an actual independent journalist look into what happened.
Well, yeah, I mean, and that is also the interesting thing, right? I mean, this journalist was commissioned by Kickstarter, which, I mean, you're a journalist, you're not freelance, but right. I thought that was really interesting that maybe that's what's going to be happening now. I mean, because the journalist wrote this on Medium, which is another interesting change in the way. I mean, Medium is, there are journalistic stories there. There are also press releases from companies there. It's one of those places that is kind of blurring the lines a little bit. So I wonder what this piece will be like. Will it be a real investigative journalism piece, or will it be a PR piece for Kickstarter?
Yeah, I mean, I think if they want it to actually be taken seriously, and if they want this to not be in vain, it should be a real investigative piece because. But we can only hope. I mean, it'll be really disappointing if it's not. I have hopes that it will be something really investigative. And we've obviously seen, again, other publications have done their own investigative stories before in failed Kickstarter projects. I think because this one is so high profile, it is kind of affirming that Kickstarter at least was the one who kind of pushed the button and said, we'll hire someone and we want to tell the story. But I do hope that by doing that, they are giving him full editorial control, and they're not going to edit him too much in the process where, his findings and his conclusions are suddenly going to be shaped, by the whims of how good or how bad it makes Kickstarter look, because there is a certain amount of criticism and onus on Kickstarter, even if they're not involved in the final push for these things. I think that there is some onus that they, as a company, and I like Kickstarter a lot and I back a lot of Kickstarter projects, but talking to so many Kickstarter project, creators over the years, they do feel like there's a certain amount of hand-holding that you get in a lot of excitement about getting your project started. And then once the backing period is over and they've got their cut, you're like, okay, now it's up to you. And there's also, they have to, I think, as a company, feel a little bit responsible in some ways for convincing people to back things, because if they give it their seal almost of approval, if they feature something, whether they're tacitly saying we vouch for these people or not, that's the idea that you get as a backer. You're saying, well, Kickstarter is featuring this, so this must be legit and this has a better shot of actually coming to fruition than other ways around. But I mean, we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, in some sense, it's the same as investing in any sort of startup, any company.
Oh,
I mean,
totally.
It's just that those people who are usually investing in big companies have a lot of money and have a lot of experience in investing. But in the in the same way, like those people do research, and if you're going to invest in Kickstarter, you should too. Like read the comments, do research on the creator, see what else they've created. There's your due diligence that you should do on your part. But if you have backed the Zano and you want to get in touch with Harris to provide details, his Medium post says you can contact him at zano@meharris.com. This episode is brought to you by the Ring Video Doorbell. You have heard me talking about the Ring Video Doorbell. I always talk about it on iOS Today with Leo. He always shows the videos of people coming to his door, and they're always interesting and useful. But it's more than just stopping would-be burglars in their tracks. This time of year, you're probably getting packages sent to the house for the holidays. With Ring, you can talk to delivery people. Keep an eye on your package. If someone tries to mess with it, you'll get an instant alert and an HD video of the whole thing. It's like having a neighbor keep an eye on your home 24/7. Installing Ring takes minutes, and it works with either your current wiring or your built-in rechargeable battery. This year, give the gift of peace of mind and convenience with the Video Doorbell. Time Magazine named one of their top 10 gadgets. Go to ring.com/TNT for free expedited FedEx shipping. That's ring.com/TNT. With Ring, you are always home. And finally, this week, you guys over at Mashable have posted the top 100 apps of all time. It's impressive. What was the process in determining these apps?
It was multi. I mean, it took months. I mean, I think we started on it kind of. The idea came up this spring, and we started kind of working on it in earnest in July. And there were kind of spurts and stops, but basically everyone on our tech team worked on it. And what we basically did was we kind of circulated a list around where we nominated apps as the number one, being worthy of being on the iPhone apps of all time list. And then we rated each app on a bunch of different categories. So we rated things based on design, utility, cultural significance, App Store ranking. So we used App Annie data to kind of show how far how high it ranked in the App Store and how long it was there. And we averaged those scores, and then kind of made a longevity was one of the categories too. And we averaged the scores, gave it a final score, and then ranked them. And then there were some cases where there were ties. That actually the top three apps, our number one app was Instagram, our number two app was Google Maps, our number three app was Facebook. They actually all had the same score. but we then kind of got into lots of arguments and debates and kind of all made our case for how we should end up ranking those 3 apps. And so a lot went into it. There was a certain amount of subjectivity, from the base of the editors, but there was also, we tried to rank, on a 1 to 5 scale in each of those categories and give things a numerical score. So it was a really long process, but I think the final product, which our team, including our deputy managing editor Amanda Wills, who did the whole layout of the thing, I think it really came together really beautifully. And we have tons of videos, and it was a very, very large project.
So all of these apps are not all still available, right? Some of them.
Not all of them are still available. There are a few, for instance, that where like Tweety was one of the apps that's there because it introduced pull to refresh, and it was so good that Twitter ended up acquiring it, making it the official Twitter app. So that's not there anymore. There are certain other apps that disappeared because either time in the App Store came up or things moved on. Like one of the early iPhone games, Tap Tap Revenge, which was a really big hit. It actually originally debuted on jailbroken iPhones and then officially came to the App Store when the App Store launched in July of 2008. That hasn't been in the App Store for a couple of years. So when we looked at this list, we were really trying to go back to, from 2008 forward, what are the most influential and important iPhone apps. And not necessarily always even saying the best, but just in some cases the most important, or the ones that have changed the app ecosystem the most.
So I was surprised to see Netflix on the list.
Yeah.
I don't watch a lot of Netflix on my phone. Do you watch a lot of Netflix on your phone?
I watch more of it on my tablet, but I do feel like Netflix on the phone was a really big move. I mean, it was kind of one of those moments where I think, especially now that people have bigger phones, the iPhone 6S Plus, and even the iPhone 6, more people watch it. And having that ability to stream and watch almost anything, anywhere, I think was a big moment. HBO Go was on the list for kind of the same reason, although in HBO Go's case, I think it was more, slash HBO Now, it was more because HBO was conceded that it's willing to give up its, what at the time especially was not insubstantial home video revenue for keeping customers around longer. But I think Netflix, yeah, I mean, you make a good point. I think that might be more of an iPad app traditionally, but I do feel like a lot of people, especially in New York, or any places where you commute a lot, if you have access to some sort of internet connection, it's a great way to catch up on your shows or your movies. I've certainly more than once, caught up on an episode of, Jessica Jones in the back of a cab.
Well, Jessica Jones is okay. Game of Thrones on HBO Go, not okay on the iPhone 6. I think that would be a travesty if anyone watched Game of Thrones on their iPhone.
No, you need to see the full thing. No, you need it on the big screen for sure.
So did you fight for any apps that didn't make the list?
I did. So there were, because there's so many apps that we would have wanted to include. Tweetbot, I love and I really stand behind. That did not make the list. In fairness, Twitter and Tweety were both there. And honestly, having more than 2 Twitter clients on the list probably would have been a little bit much. Authy, we had Google Authenticator, but I like Authy a lot. Clear, the task manager Clear was one. Fantastical, I don't know if that made our list or not. I don't think it did, but that's one of my favorite calendaring apps. If it is on the list, then I'm super stoked that it got there, because that means that I won the argument. But there were some podcast apps that didn't make the list. There were about 7 or 8 of us who were kind of determining what was going to appear there. So certainly some things won and some things lost.
Well, it's definitely an interesting list to me and to anyone who is an iPhone addict. I also think probably Microsoft and are looking at. I mean, they took Acompli and,
Yep.
or Dropbox. I think a lot of the big companies probably will look at your list, because I think all of the apps that they have bought, I think they probably mostly heard in sites like you guys and TechCrunch, like just who are the digerati? What are they downloading? I am going to buy it and maybe change it for good, or maybe kill it.
Maybe shut it down. Yeah. Right. Well, that was the funny thing. That was the funny thing. We'd had this set, right? And we'd already had, you bring up a good thing. So, Outlook was on the list because it's a great mail client. And frankly, Acompli was great. But to Microsoft's credit, they've made it better. They put the guy who was, the head of Acompli, he runs now all of Outlook for Microsoft, right? So he runs the entire thing now. But then you look at something like Mailbox, which was on our list and ranked on our list. We also had Sparrow, which Google killed after they bought it, and they didn't bother to make Gmail as good as Sparrow was. But anyway, but Mailbox, it was already on our list. And then literally like this week, it's announced that it's going away. And so our list was already locked. We had to kind of add that there. But it kind of brings up a good point, or an interesting challenge of this project, because when we started it and when we ended it, things had already changed in terms of the history of some of those apps and the stories behind some of those apps. We were already kind of locked in. But I think at the same time, just because Mailbox is no longer going away doesn't necessarily decrease its cultural significance. Maybe if we were to do this list in a year, it might not have been there just because it's gone away. But I feel like what it did do was it kind of opened up the door for whether or not Dropbox was able to make money off of it and kind of pivot it into its greater business ambitions or not, which clearly it wasn't. What it did do at the time was kind of introduce the idea, of the waiting list, for an app, which was a really unique launch strategy for an app. And B, I think it really kind of showed that you could take something like Mail and by simply adding features that make it less terrible into something that people would wait in line to be able to do. And so certainly, Mailbox didn't work in their case, but Outlook's app, Buy an Accompli, has achieved on its goals, and it has many of the same ethos things that Mailbox introduced.
Well, that does it for the tech news. Our TNT fan of the day is Freedom Tech LLC, who watches our shows inside his store in Jersey City, New Jersey. Look at Mike up there on the big screen for all the store to see.
That's awesome.
So show us how you watch or listen to TNT. You can just record a video or take a picture of yourself or your setup and post it on Instagram, Google+, Twitter, or Facebook, and use the hashtag HowIWatchTNT, and we will find it. Christina Warren, what else are you working on this coming week that we should look forward to seeing?
Lots and lots of year-end stuff. So lots of, kind of like look backs of the tech we've lost in 2015. That's one of the big stories I'm working on. So we've got a lot of new entries to that this week alone, because both Facebook and Dropbox killed off a bunch of things, as well as kind of year-end analyses from various companies. So that's what I'm working on this week. And then after next week, I will be off on vacation for the rest of the year. So I'm trying to basically fill in everything in the next 5 days as I can, because I will be gone.
Right, and tell everyone important not to announce anything important while you're gone, right?
Yeah, no, I'm going to be probably in the Bahamas, so I'm not even going to be connected to the internet. So, they can announce it all they want, but I'm just not going to be there, so it's okay.
Well, the day that I took a vacation day this year, it was the day that the blue dress happened, and I'll never take a vacation again. No,
you can. So you return to the internet and you're like, what happened? And then you look at it and you're like, well, obviously the dress is blue.
Yes, exactly.
Like, about this.
Exactly. Well, Christina Warren is the senior tech correspondent at Mashable, and you can find her at Film Girl on Twitter. Thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks, Megan.
And you can subscribe to Tech News Today on Spotify, Deezer, Stitcher, iTunes, YouTube, Feedly, Yahoo, TuneIn, RSS. You have so many options. Choose your favorite way to subscribe at twit.tv/TNT. You can also watch us live every weekday at 10 a.m. Pacific. And if you're ever in the San Francisco Bay Area, come on in and watch us as part of our studio audience. To do that, send emails to tickets@twit.tv. You can follow us on Twitter at Tech News Today TV, and you can tweet at me about the show or about anything. I am at Megan Maroney. And if you are missing Mike, never fear. We've got a few of our holiday specials that we got in the bag. We interviewed some of the best journalists about some of the most compelling topics of this year. Also, don't miss our other tech news show. That's Tech News Tonight at 4 p.m. Pacific every weekday. And this show was produced by Jason Cleanthes and edited by Tony Wang. My name is Megan Maroney. Thanks for tuning in. See you Monday. I feel like I should tap on do the mic honorary tap.